There's so many questions about the process that is likely to unfold to get Thabo Bester, Dr. Nandipha Magudumana, and Mozambican national Zacharia Alberto back to South Africa. Now, this comes hot on the heels of the shock that efforts to bring the Guptas back to the country have been unsuccessful. And then, self-proclaimed Prophet Sheperd Bushiri is yet to come back to South Africa. Now, legal commentator and PhD candidate in public constitutional and international law at Unisa advocate Selby Makgotho joins us live now. Thank you so much for your time. I know the viewers always see you on the other side at the SIU tribunal.
Oh, yeah. No, thank you very much. It's good to be here.
Thank you. Let's start with this Thabo Bester matter, because that is the one that is being talked about right now. How likely is it to be a straightforward matter? Because given the fact that he is a convicted criminal, is it likely to be a straightforward deportation, or can we see a lengthy process there?
Well, it is supposed to be a straightforward deportation process. No technicalities. It's a very, very simple issue. However, we must be mindful that the crime where he was found is in Tanzania. And it will then mean that the interest of Tanzania in terms of the immigration laws of Tanzania will then have to apply. He has been found as a person who was in the country illegally and lawfully. So he will have some explanation to do to the Tanzanian authorities as to how did he arrive there, what was his business there, together with his accomplices. So in as far as it will not be an extradition issue, it was supposed to be a deportation issue, but we do not expect that the delegation that has gone to Tanzania at the moment will then bring him back in a flight. There might be some technicalities. He might not be here tomorrow. He might not be here this week, but we do believe that it will not be long since it is a straight deportation issue.
Will it be the same for the other two, Zacharia Alberto and Dr. Nandipha Magudumana?
It might not. Remember, Thabo Bester was already convicted, was already serving jail term. So it was just a question of taking him back to the cells and to explain whatever is outstanding. But now with the others, remember there's a warrant of arrest. So that is where I suppose the negotiations between the South African authorities and the Tanzanian authorities are currently focusing on in relation to the allegations leveled against the other accomplices, the doctor who is the alleged spouse or partner, and the other Mozambican national. Those also will have to go through and be processed according to the Tanzanian laws, so that they also explain their role, their involvement, how did they get into the country, what was their business there. So they are including so many allegations that their passports were not stamped. So there's just a lot of questions that need answers.
And talking about questions that need answers, there's also the question, I mean, you think about what happened with the Guptas when we started seeing what was coming out, and then next thing we hear they're no longer in South Africa. Prophet Sheperd Bushiri, we then started seeing movement there, but then we heard he's no longer in South Africa. Now Thabo Bester and Dr. Nandipha Magudumana being nabbed in another country, they left the country. So why is it so easy for fugitives to find their way out of South Africa?
I think we must also ask what is happening actually at the borders. Why is it so easy that a person commits a crime in South Africa and then tomorrow morning he wakes up in another country? No one is able to give a very, very clear account as to how did they escape. But again, it shows that South Africa actually is a signatory to quite a number of treaties. It has quite a number of international relations at diplomatic levels, and even in matters of extradition. But I think from these lessons, what we are able to gather is that despite the treaty obligations in place, it is not as harmonious as we thought it will be. Because then we see the geopolitical frictions coming into play here, and countries not being willing to share. You'll be amazed, because in terms of South Africa and the United Arab Emirates, they are both signatories to the United Nations Convention on Corruption, which is mandatory to the two countries to work together on matters of international cooperation, in terms of asset recovery, in terms of exchange of information. But from what we gather, what the South African government is telling us is that it has been so much stonewalled, such that the information could not just easily come. You asked about Prophet Bushiri. You'll be amazed, because Bushiri also left and nobody was able to give a clear account as to what is happening, except that the Home Affairs subsequently said an official or two have been suspended. That is not enough, because given the gravity of the crime, that is alleged to have been committed by Bushiri and his wife, the monies that are alleged to have been involved, cases of money laundering, it cannot be as simple as ABC. So again, now the most recent in relation to the Malawian Bushiri case, is that now the court in Malawi has ruled that South African witnesses ought to travel to Malawi to go and testify there. At whose expense?
The taxpayers.
Absolutely.
And
So
can
that is
the
a problem.
taxpayers, though, continue to fund these particular processes that are so lengthy?
Extradition proceedings by their nature are quite protracted and quite lengthy. So it bothers, it is quite mind-boggling, because if at this point it is so easy for the fugitives to escape, the process of bringing them back is just so difficult and is so protracted. The Guptas are alleged to have left sometime in 2018, and that was at the time when the UAE and South Africa ratified the extradition treaty, which came into effect sometime in July 2021.
So is it worth the paper? Because there was the ratification and of course, a lot of people thought that this was also going to be able to assist. So is it worth the paper that it's written on, that particular agreement?
Ideally, it should, because then it was giving much more, it was supposed to have much more biting teeth. But seemingly, based on what happened, it looks like a lot still needs to happen, either at a diplomatic level, at the legal relations level, at the government level itself. There's a lot of discussions that need to take place, because, I mean, as taxpayers of South Africa, we cannot afford to be put in darkness relating to how the Guptas left. Nobody is actually able to share convincingly how the Guptas left, except that they were alleged to be in prison and then subsequently spotted in Switzerland. So this extradition treaties, hence I say, do not guarantee that the countries that are signatories to them will ultimately work together to achieve the common goal.
And I suppose then, because as much as this is technically a different kind of matter, but it does fall into an agreement that South Africa would have. The Rome Statute, of course, around the International Criminal Court, and the fact that now, there's a fresh storm around Vladimir Putin, as well as the fact that what we saw when Omar al-Bashir was in the country. So that's also another area that South Africa is also now trying to navigate.
Importantly so, and having learned from the former Sudanese president, Omar al-Bashir, we do not think that at this stage it will be proper then to think that we need to go in, ultimately have the courts. There is a lot of debate, a necessary one for that matter, because some of the scholars were actually of the view that the Omar al-Bashir matter was not properly handled. It was not properly handled, then it ended up in courts, then the court having to go to the executive to direct it to behave in a particular manner. I think there are valuable lessons that have been drawn there. And again, with the ICC, with the pending Putin visit in August for the BRICS summit, it is quite important that in relation to the manner in which the ICC statutes are being applied, I think they ought to be applied equally. And there's argument that it should not be hard on African leaders and a little bit soft on other well-established leaders. I think we don't need that type of a debate. If ever South Africa is a signatory, and or any other country for that matter, let the people who are supposed to be charged or to be accountable be treated equally. I think that is the argument that is out there, and I think we need to see how it unfolds moving forward.
And it's an important argument, because a lot of, both sides are making compelling arguments here. But let's wrap it up then and look at, finally, South Africa now wanting to appeal this particular decision around the Guptas. Is it the right course of action to go towards the UAE, although we do not know where they are right now, and we know that the court tried them as citizens of Vanuatu?
Well, appealing is one of the options that is on the table, that is on the cards, because there are quite a number of cases. I mean, for instance, you'll recall the Denmark issue. There was one business person there who did not want to go back to his home country. It was the United Kingdom, having committed lots and lots of fraudulent activities. Ultimately, he won. There was that multinational owner of one giant motoring company in Lebanon. ultimately the appeal got successful based on those grounds. I think it is now for South Africa to go and indicate back to the UAE that the extradition of the Guptas will be in the best interest of justice. There will be no human rights violations occurring, and that more importantly, their extradition will actually help in answering so many hanging questions relating to the alleged looting of funds that occurred subsequently.
What chances, though, of accountability when we don't know where they are?
That is what the appeal process should seek to do. Because the other option obviously will be to start everything from the scratch. But the risk there is that if ever we start the extradition proceedings, everything, the paperwork from the scratch, it might take another year or two. And at this rate at which things are going, it is not convincing that we will get elsewhere. So appealing, there is already a case, then it can be pursued.
Let's see what then happens. Thank you for stopping by. Do appreciate it. Wearing a different hat.
Thank you very much.
We'll call on you more on this different hat that you're wearing.
Much appreciated.
That was a legal commentator and PhD candidate in public constitutional and international law at Unisa advocate Selby Makgotho.